Good morning, everybody. Today we're talking about getting started with online giving, with sort of a focus of how to get online giving going with your database as quickly as possible, given that a lot of people are having to move to fundraising 100% online as we live through this crisis time that we're going through. So that's kind of the main focus that we're going to be using here, and it kind of that's the outline of how things are going to go. I am your instructor. My name is John Coleman. I'm a technical writer at Bloomerang. I started working at Bloomerang in customer support, so there's always a good chance that maybe we had a chat in the past. We maybe have talked before, but now I'm a technical writer in Bloomerang, so I'm kind of more focused on teaching and writing help documentation that helps you guys use our database. Just want to remind you that you can sign up for more classes. We have a special version of the Academy page up right now. It is located currently at bloomerang.co/academy/COVID-19. You can head there and you can get resources specific to how to run your organization through this COVID-19 time. There's a lot of great resources. We're adding new ones all the time. The Academy pages are still available, the regular ones with the older videos there, but we've got this new page right now going that is just a collection of resources to help you get through this. So we're going to go ahead and get going with online giving. And so for the scope of this class, we're going to focus on getting online giving set up with Bloomerang as quickly as possible so that you can continue to fundraise. With that in mind, we've broken the topics down of this in the class into three main sections. These are kind of like the three things that I think are most important for getting going with online giving. The first of which is essentials for getting started with online giving. These are kind of the bare essentials that you need to get set up in your database in order to create opportunities for constituents to contribute to your organization. And in that section, we're going to be discussing creating a campaign. We're going to be going over how to add transaction processors to your database. We're going to go over adding fraud prevention tools in the database, and then we're going to look at a created online form, kind of the main focus, but there's some setup before we can go all the way to the online form. Next, we're going to discuss the different ways to get online forms out to your constituents. So by this point, you've got a form made. What are the different ways that you could get it into your constituents' hands? And so we're going to look at adding an online giving form to a website. We're going to look at Bloomerang hosted forms. So all of our transaction forms have a Bloomerang hosted version of it out of the box. So at the very least, if you don't have a website, or if you had some difficulty getting the form onto your website, you will still have a form available to you in the database that has a publicly accessible URL. So you've got something, you're covered in some way. And then we're going to look at adding a form into an email template. And we have some new COVID-19 specific email templates. I'm going to use one of those in the presentation just to show you how you can add a link to the form into a button in an email template and get it out to your constituents, so that all they got to do is click a button and head to your form and start donating. And then we'll wrap everything up with keeping track and following up. So you've made your form, you've gotten your form out there, people are starting to donate, and in this section we'll talk about keeping track of progress with the campaign. We'll look at a few different ways to report on forms and campaigns, and then we'll check out first-time donor calls. First-time donor calls is a newer feature that we have in the database that basically puts new donors on your dashboard, their information on your dashboard, so that it's easily accessible for you to see who's new and give them a phone call. There's a lot of research that says it's really useful and it's a good idea to give new donors a call within the first couple of days or so after they donate to your organization, because whenever you do that, you kind of facilitate creating a relationship with this new donor, and they're much more likely to keep donating in the future. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave my slides and head to my demo database. So this is the dashboard of my demo database that I'll be using for this presentation. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is creating a campaign in Bloomerang for crisis fundraising. Campaigns track large fundraising efforts aimed at raising a certain amount of money. And so we kind of think it's a good idea to set up a campaign for fundraising efforts during this time so that you can keep track of funds coming in through your forms and funds coming in just through your effort to raise money during COVID-19. You can associate campaigns with online giving forms so that everything is raised via an online form would go towards this campaign. So here I am on my dashboard, and I'm going to show you where the campaigns are. We are going to be working a lot in the settings section of the database. And it's a good rule of thumb. I always remember if you have to head to the settings, you need to be an admin user. So everything we're doing today is you need to be an administrator user in your database. So if you don't quite have that, but maybe you've had some of these tasks delegated to you, you maybe need to talk with your organization about those privileges, or perhaps someone else just needs to get these set up. But that said, we're going to hit settings. And then right here under common settings, we've got campaigns. So I'm going to click that. And these are some campaigns that are in my demo database here. You see I've got one that's COVID-19. That's what I'm going to be working with today. The rest of these are just kind of tests and things that came in my demo database. So I'm going to click COVID-19, and you'll see here that it's got a name, it's marked active, it's got a goal amount of funds that we want to raise, and it's got a start date and an end date. Now, the thing with campaigns and the dashboard, the goal, start date, and end date are technically not required when you set this up, but if you want those to show up on your dashboard, you do need to add those. So I just kind of think of them as all required, basically. So how I created a new campaign was I came to settings, I clicked campaigns, that brings me here, and then I clicked new, and I filled out some information to create a new campaign. So let's just try new campaign. It's marked active. Let's say we want to raise 200,000. And you can click these date pickers. Actually, it's really nice. Let's say the campaign starts on the 31st of March, and it's just going to go for a month, and it'll end in April. Click save. Of course, I've already named a new campaign. So I'll just write testing here real quick, and I'll click save. And now it's here in my campaign section. One other thing to note here, you have the ability to drag and drop these. And so you can rearrange the order that they're in. And the nice thing about that, the reason that you would want to do that is because when you head out to your dashboard here, that affects the order that you see them in here. So since I put COVID-19 on top, that's the first thing I'm seeing on my dashboard. So right off the bat, I've got a campaign going on my dashboard focused on raising funds at this time, and it's the first thing you see there. So now I'm going to talk about adding transaction processors. Transaction processors are necessary in order to create transactions within your database, and they're also necessary to use with our online forms. It's just absolutely mandatory to get that set up if you want to use online giving forms. So we do have integrations with a couple of different transaction processors, and I'm going to show you really quick on our website. If you head to bloomerang.co, and then if you were to click features and then payment processing, I'm here now, and you can see a quick comparison between Stripe and Moolah, our two transaction processors. We've got a breakdown of the different types of fees that are associated with each. And the main difference I usually tell people is I kind of recommend Stripe unless you need EFT donations, and then in which case you would go with Moolah. But generally Stripe works for people, and unless they need those EFT transactions. You can get a special nonprofit rate when you use Stripe. You just need your EIN number and an IRS letter, and you can email nonprofit@stripe.com in order to talk to them more about getting that nonprofit rate. So now that I've talked a little bit more about the different transaction processes that we have, I'll just show you that in the database now. So once again, you click the gear icon here in the menu. This time we're going to click View All Settings, and then we're going to click Transactions, and that brings our transaction settings pane over here on the right side, and then we would click Transaction Processors. So you can see I've got a few different ones set up in my demo database here. I'm going to be using an older version of a connection with Stripe just so that I'm able to so that I can process transactions for our demo purposes. But if you were to create a connection with Stripe now, you would be using Stripe Connect. And so I can show you really quick. That's what the menu looks like when you have a Stripe Connect connection with your database. It just has a name. You can add some notes here if you needed to. You can see that the Stripe account is connected. You have the ability to disconnect it from your Bloomerang database here. And then you have a few buttons. It's default and active. Currently mine is active, but I don't have it marked as default just because I don't want it to show up as the first option since I'm using this older one. But if you were to create a new connection to a transaction processor, you would head here. So just real quick, I went to View All Settings, and then I hit Transactions, and then Transaction Processors. And you wind up here. So then you would click New in the upper right-hand corner. And let's say we were adding a Stripe processor. You can, from here, click Add My Existing Stripe Account. So if you already had a Stripe account, you could go ahead and just make the connection. If you needed to create a new Stripe account, you would click this. And from there, it would take you away to Stripe. You would fill out some information about your organization, and you can authorize the connection between Stripe and Bloomerang. And then once you have done that, you basically wind up right back here and back in Bloomerang, and the connection is made. It's really not too long of a process at all. And once you have that set up, you'll be able to process transactions with your database. So from there, I'm going to move on and talk about fraud prevention tools. If you would like to add a form onto your website, it's very important that you set up an account with Google Recaptcha and connect that with your database. Otherwise, the form will not fully display on your website. This used to be optional, but last fall we made it mandatory in order to cut down on fraudulent transactions. And much like the transaction processor setup, it's not terribly long, so it's very handy to go ahead and just get that set up before you go creating an online form. So I'll show you where that is located in the database. If you click Settings and then Website Integration, this will bring you to it's mainly settings for forms. There's a few other things, but then if you go down here to Form Settings, this is where you can set up your Captcha information in the database so that it is used on your forms on your website. At the top here, it's got some information about what Captcha is, and basically, if it's not ringing a bell, you maybe have seen one on the internet. It's just basically those little boxes that have you check that you're not a robot. Usually, you just have to check it, and you're good to go. Sometimes your browser may have some information in it that makes the Captcha account want to really verify that you're a person instead of a robot. And that's when you'll see those image boxes pop up where you click this, every pane that has a stoplight in it, or every pane that has a motorcycle in it. Either way, I feel like 9 times out of 10, I'm just clicking a box. That 10th time, I do have to click through a few things, but that's not too long either. But basically, it's just a really good way to verify that you are not you're a person and you're not some sort of bot or application that someone has written to try to test a bunch of fraudulent transactions using your database. It stops them right there because it just sees that you're just not a human. So it's a really handy thing to have in, and again, it's required if you want the form to show up on your website. So the steps in order to set that up can be found here by clicking sign up for Google Recaptcha. And that will take you to our help documentation on this. And it's got step-by-step directions for how to set this up. And right here in step number 2, it's got a link to Google's Recaptcha site, which is where you will be doing all the setup. But basically, you've got step-by-step directions right in here. If you click the Google Recaptcha site, you'll be taken away to their page for Google Recaptcha. You do need to have a Google account. So if you're not signed into one already, it'll ask you to sign into one. If you don't have an account, you'll have to create a Google account first. But then once you're signed in and you head here, you'll be able to click Admin Console. And we can just take a quick look at mine really fast. If we go to Settings, we'll see this is my Captcha account as it is set up now. So it's got a name. I just called it Bloomerang, and you can name it whatever makes sense to you. It's just kind of made sense to me to call it Bloomerang. When I initially set it up, I chose Recaptcha V2. That's really important, and we do discuss that in our help documentation here. It's really important to check version 2 because that is the version that is compatible with our online forms. And then working your way down, it asks for the domain of the site where you're going to be displaying the form. And so all that is the root domain of your website. So if I was putting a form anywhere on bloomerang.co, I would add bloomerang.co in here. And it's sometimes people want to put the direct URL of where the form is located, like maybe /donate. The Captcha account just wants to see the root domain. So that's something I just really like to clarify there. And from there, you don't have too much more to fill out. It's explained in the documentation here. But after you do that and you submit, you receive these keys. And let's get back to my demo database here. You receive a site key and a secret key. And all you have to do is copy paste those and add them here in your Bloomerang database. And once that's a connection is set up with that, you'll be able to use Captcha on your online giving form. And you can see I've checked use Captcha for transaction forms here. And so once it's all set up, you're going to be more secure, and your form is going to be protected while it's on your website. The one other thing that we have in this section to help with fraud prevention is something called IP rate limiting. You can turn that on or off here. Basically what this does is if someone is trying to enter a bunch of transactions from one specific location, they have a specific IP address. They have the internet sees them at a specific address online. And so if sometimes when people are trying to test stolen credit cards, they're going to be in one location and they're going to be trying to dump a bunch of different credit cards into the form. The IP rate limiting basically clicks in after a certain point and says, hey, you can't keep adding more transactions here. And I can show you really quick. This is the error message that you see if the rate limiting is turned on and you're adding a ton of transactions from one location. It basically just winds up saying you're done here. You can come back later, or please give us a call or phone or email. There are times when maybe you don't want this turned on if you're going to be having some sort of event, or you're personally going to be adding a bunch of transactions through a form somehow. You might want that turned off so that it doesn't get in your way. So that's something, it's optional. It doesn't have to be on. I think generally it's good to just keep it on until you know that you aren't going to be needing it. Like, you know that you're going to be entering a bunch of transactions. Okay, so at this point, we've made a campaign, we've added a transaction processor, and we've set up our fraud prevention tools. So now is a good time to go ahead and create an online form. I like to get those steps out of the way first because they're mandatory. They need to be done before you're able to create and use forms. So I find it helpful to just kind of explain those first. Let's get that stuff knocked out before you go to making a form. So what I'm going to do is head to the forms area of the website. If I click the gear icon for settings here and then website integration, that brings me back. We were in form settings just now, but I'm out here in the main menu area for website integration. And basically, we're going to be working specifically with online giving forms right here. We have a number of different types of forms. If they have a gift icon here, that means it's a transaction-based form. If there is a word balloon right here, that means it's an interaction-based form. So a transaction-based form, it requires a transaction in order to submit to your database, and it is going to create a transaction entry on the constituent's timeline whenever they use it. An interaction-based form does not require any transactions, and it's going to create an interaction on their timeline. So the online giving form, they donate, there's a transaction on the timeline. An email sign-up form, they're just submitting some information to you, and you'll see an interaction for it. So I'm going to go ahead and click online giving forms. And before I dig in too much, I'm going to show you this form as it is on my demo database, right, or demo website. It's this COVID-19 online donations. So I'm going to head to my website. This is that's a demo website that I created. I have a fake nonprofit that offers free pro bono web design and web development work for other nonprofits. And basically, when I set this up for this class, I had in mind, okay, so for COVID-19, I think that your website, it would be really wise to have a big hero section here with a call to action right up front that's basically saying, we're not in the office right now, but we're still working as hard as we can for you. We still need your donations in order to operate. And so that's why you maybe would have had something different on the front page of your website, but for right now, I think it would be really wise to just say right up front, a big donate button, help us keep going, click this button and you'll be able to donate to us. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And that takes me to the page I created that has the form. Over here on the left is just some copy from the website. This doesn't come with our forms. It's just some things I added to the page. But on the right side here this is the actual form itself that is generated from the code snippet that we'll get later in the database. So this is one of our forms right here. So I'll just quickly go through what's on here. We've got these donation levels. We can go ahead and just enter a test here. So we'll say $10. They have the option to pick any of these levels or enter their own amount. They can toggle on or off the ability to make this a recurring donation. And in this case, I am allowing them the ability to select how often that recurring donation occurs. I'm just going to go ahead and keep it as a one-time donation. Down here, they add their contact information. I'm just going to make someone up real quick. We'll call him David Example, and I'll just use my information to auto-complete, but they would fill out their specific information here. So next, they got their billing address. This is just our work address. And then here towards the bottom, we've got a section for additional information. And in this section, I've got a custom field that I have actually added. This doesn't come out of the box with our forms, but they're really easy to add. I just thought it was something that kind of made sense to me. And I'm basically just asking how did you hear about us? How did you get to this form? With my fake organization here, maybe we've got some Facebook ads going on Instagram, Twitter, word of mouth. People are still talking and letting each other know about different organizations. Another one I could have maybe added was just like email, but we'll just say that David example saw us on Twitter. He can add some additional comments here if he would like. Then here at the very bottom, we've got this ability to increase my impact, which is basically they have the option when they donate through your form to offset your bank fees. So this 53 cents here is based on the $10 up here. So if I were to change that to $25, you'll see that it went up to 87 cents. So it's just a calculation that happens in the background to let you know, or to offset the bank fees, so that you get all $10 of that donation, and the 53 cents goes to Stripe in this case. So we'll go ahead and click that. And then this is the Captcha account that we set up. And all I'm going to do is click I'm not a robot. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, you just click it and you're good to go. So then you would click enter payment, and it already fills in the name here. We'll go ahead and add a test credit card. This is a test Visa number that is available for anyone to use when they're just testing things out. We can just make this stuff up since it's a demo. We'll say it expires 2022, and we'll give it a 123 there on the security number. And basically, real quick, a note about this overlay. If you have Stripe Connect, which is the newer version of Stripe, you would have, instead of seeing this overlay pop up, there would just be an additional box in the form for them to add their credit card information. And the nice thing about Stripe Connect is it's such a secure connection that they're able to do that as opposed to having this additional overlay. So it looks a little bit different. It's a little bit cleaner maybe than this, but functionally it's about the same. So we'll go ahead and click donate. And here, after we've done our donation, you can see this custom message here. It says, "You are awesome. Your generous gift has been processed. We truly appreciate your continued support." And then we've got some buttons here for social media actions. You can tweet about it. You can follow us on Twitter. You can like us and share that you made this donation on Facebook. So those are really handy things to include with your form. So now that we've done that, we'll head back to my demo database. And just real quick, I'll show you the transaction that has occurred. We can look up David example now because he's been created in our database. He's right here. And then if I head to the timeline, we can see that he received a reply thanking him for making the donation, but here's the donation itself. Right here on the timeline, you can see the amount is $10.53 because it's including that bank offset option. So he donated $10, but then added 53 cents to help cover your fees. You can see that this was applied to a specific fund, campaign, and appeal, and I'll go over that in a little bit as we go through actually creating the form where that was set up. We can see that it was created by Stripe and processed by Stripe there. And then further down, I've got these are custom fields that I've used for other examples, but at the very bottom we can see online giving fields. How did you hear about us? And it's marked as Twitter. So I used a transaction-based custom form or custom field in order to create that, and I'll go over this in the form itself. But basically, tied to this transaction now is his reply to how he heard about us. So that's handy. I think that's something that's useful to people when you have different ad campaigns going on. It's something that's worthwhile to use there. So we'll go ahead and head back to the form, and I can walk through everything that you saw on the website in the form settings now. So I'll click settings, I'll click website integration, I'll click online giving forms, and then this is the form that I'm using on my website. And here is the form settings for this specific form. So I've got a name here that is only identifiable within the database. They don't see it out in the website. So I called mine COVID-19 online donations because it's a form that I'm using specifically to get online donations right now. You can mark it active. You can also toggle it as inactive sometimes if you're done using it and you're moving on to other forms. Here is the option to select the transaction processor, and I have it tied to that older Stripe account like I mentioned. If you set up a new Stripe Connect account, you would have selected that. But you'll notice that you do have to select a transaction processor to even create the form. So that's why I kind of put that at the top of my agenda of things you have to do to get going with this. I think it's good, like I said, to get the transaction processor set up and to get the Google Captcha account set up before you even get to the form stuff. So we select the transaction processor here. And next, there's a confirmation email settings area. This is the email that they receive whenever they successfully submit to the form. I currently have it set to Bloomerang default, and so I can show you really quick. I made one earlier today with a different example. So this is a different example person. This is the default email that they receive for having donated. It's got a greeting. Thank you for your donation to my organization. Date and amount, and more social media here. So this is the default email that they'll get just out of the box, automatically sent to them after they make this donation. Following that, we've got the notification email settings. And basically, by default, the organization's email, as it is set up in your database, is going to receive the notification that a new donation has come in. You can also add additional email addresses here if you wanted more people or specific people to receive a notification that an online donation has come in. So maybe someone on your team, someone in your organization is kind of in charge of cultivating these new donors. You can add them here and they'll get a new email every time a new transaction is made through this form. And I can show you really quick. Here is for that same example that I did earlier today. It's just got all the details that it was sent to me as a result of submitting to this form. You got the date, name, the email of that person, the amount, the fund, the form that was used, and if they entered any comments, those would be visible here. And basically, it's just got the main information that you would maybe want to know about whenever you get a new donation coming in. So I'm going to move on through my form here. And next we've got fund, campaign, and appeal. I have created a COVID-19 fund, so I went ahead and tied that to this form. I've got a COVID-19 campaign, and remember we set that up at the beginning of our talk here. So I set that up specifically to tie it to this form so that I've got a campaign going that I can pay attention to that is keeping track of the donations coming through this form. I also have an appeal here for COVID-19. I'm pretty uniform, so I named all these things the same thing. You have the ability to click Add Fund here, and so you can add additional funds to be available as options in the form when they're donating. So let's just add one of them. Let's just say we want the building fund to be another option. So whenever I add this on the form, it's going to automatically show up after saving and publishing on my website, and then they'll have the option to see that and select that on the form. And I'll show that after I go through the rest of the form creation. I'll be able to show you these changes that I made in the database showing automatically on the form. Next, we've got the recurring donations options in the form. We can allow them to select the frequency. So that's where you saw earlier when I clicked make it a recurring donation, I had the option to choose how often that would occur. We can also click to allow them to select the start date when it will begin. So if someone can set up a recurring donation and they could say, well, I don't want it to start till like March 1st or April 1st. And so that you can have that option as well. I'll go ahead just to keep making changes that we'll be able to see. I'll go ahead and untoggle that one. And what this will do is they still have the option to make it a recurring donation, but they can only make it monthly. That's just the way it'll be. And so if anyone selects recurring, it'll be monthly. Next, we've got True Impact. This is that section we saw at the very bottom of the form that allowed them to offset their bank fees. It's a really nice thing to include there. It helps you get that full $10 or that full $25, and you can throw the rest of that money that was calculated there towards your bank fees, so you don't have to pay for that. That's a really good one, I think, to just keep on. I think a lot of people end up clicking it. Next, we've got the donation levels. So when you saw the $10, $25, $100, that's where this was set up. I'm going to go ahead and just add a new level here. We can say I got an autosave here or autocomplete for 250. So we'll go ahead and do that. And you do have to include these impact statements. It's just kind of helpful to explain maybe what that $10 is going towards. It's really useful to just tell people like what this means to you as the organization. So you can see my impact statement examples. I'm saying, $10 gets me lunch, $25 puts some gas in my car, $100 keeps our internet going for the month. And with this one, this is really generous. So I'm just going to say, wow, thanks so much. So, and you can also move these around if you wanted to. I tend to just kind of put them in order for like an ascending a dollar amount. So then moving on, we have the custom field section. So when we had this, how did you hear about us on the form, that's where I added it. And what I ended up doing was I created first a transaction custom field in my database. So you do have to do that first. So if you hit the settings icon and then head to transaction under custom fields, you can create this. And so once that is created, you have the ability to add it here. And I usually recommend using a transaction custom field, because this way their response to when they heard about us here is tied just to the transaction, and it's not a permanent attribute, or however you would like to say it, on their constituent profile. So if you use the constituent field, you would maybe use something more along the lines of that you want to keep track of, like, and you just know that that's just going to be them. Like maybe like, what's your occupation? Someone's probably going to be a teacher for, so that's something that you would tie just to their profile. But with this, how did you hear about us? Maybe that changes in the future. Maybe they have, maybe you just don't want to see that on the profile, but you do want to see it in the transaction. So that's why I did that. So now that we've gone through these, I'm going to go ahead and click next. And this is a step 2 in the creation of the form. We have the options for the success page. So whenever we saw this "you are awesome" and all this information here, this was set to build in Bloomerang, and I filled out the information here along with these social media buttons. You can turn these on and off. You can leave those on and off if you would like. If you don't have a Twitter account, obviously you would leave that out. But you can toggle these on and off. You can make the message say whatever you would like right here. You do also have the ability to redirect to a URL. And this comes up when maybe you, on your website, you have a successful thank you page that you would like to use. That's just, it's something different that we offer right here in the form settings. And you really like that instead. You want to send them there instead. Maybe that page is a jumping off point to other parts of your site or other ways they can get involved. So that's when you would use a redirect URL there. And you would just add the URL where that page is on your site right here in the settings. For now, I'll just go ahead and keep it as build in Bloomerang, and then I'm going to click Save and Preview. So this is the preview page of our form. This is not really a functioning version of the form. It's just kind of a layout. This is roughly what it's going to look like. And so this is just one last look before you publish the page. You can also take a look at that success page. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is click Publish. And I'm going to come back to this in just a second. But now that I've published that, will be able to see these changes on the website automatically, the changes I made while we were talking here. So I went back to my demo website, I clicked donate, I'm in my donation area, and now that I have this $250 amount, they have the ability to select that. They can choose which fund they would like to use. Whenever they choose to make it a monthly donation, that's it. They don't have the ability to just make it quarterly or yearly or anything. They can make it a recurring donation, but that's the only option that you're offering there. Not sure if I changed much else. I don't believe that I did, but those are the changes that I made, and really I'm just trying to demonstrate how easy it is to make changes in your Bloomerang database, and when the form is all set up on your website, they just occur on the website automatically. So it's kind of a set it and forget it thing. When you put the form on your site, you can make your changes in Bloomerang and rearrange how the form works from there without having to do much any kind of heavy lifting on your website. So how exactly does this form show on my website? I used this code snippet right here that's provided right after you publish the form. So once you publish the form, you wind up on this page and you get this little snippet of code right here that you can use to embed on your website. It's really similar to if you've ever used a YouTube video and clicked embed and added it to your website. It's kind of the same idea. You're pulling something from another source on the internet and using it to display on your website. I wish I could show you how to do this on all the different platforms that are available, but unfortunately I can't, because it's a little bit different between WordPress and Squarespace and Wix. They all kind of have their own way that you can do this, but the good thing is that they all have the ability to do this, and they all have documentation that can help you get this onto your website. So there's definitely a way to use this. And it's usually as simple as copying it and pasting it where you want it to embed on your website. But how it's done does kind of vary between different platforms that you might use. Down here at the bottom on this page, we've got this donate button, and this is basically showing what you will see on the website if you do not have Captcha enabled and if you do not have an Ssl certificate on your website. So again, earlier today I talked about adding Captcha. I think that's a good idea to do first before you get to creating your form. It's like similar to the transaction processor. It's good to just have that stuff all set up before you come in here and create your form. As far as the Ssl certificate goes, if you're not totally familiar with what that means, it is, if you look on, most browsers will tell you this now. If you look on my demo site here, you see that I've got a padlock symbol here. This is in Chrome. I know Firefox and Safari and other browsers, they kind of have their own version of showing that. If I click on the URL here and I kind of click around, it'll show me the full URL. You'll notice that there is the HTTPS. And that is something that it's increasingly more rare to see HTTP. Most platforms, they're just automatically going to give you that Ssl certificate, but there is the outside chance that you don't have it set up on your site, and if you don't, you'll see that donate button instead. If that's the case, you'll have to work with your website. Maybe you've got an IT department, or maybe you can talk to the support for your website about getting that Ssl certificate in place. But that does, the donate button does point to a Bloomerang hosted version of the form, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. So in the event that you do not have a website or the means to embed the form on your website, you at least have a form available to you. So if I click Settings, Website Integration, Online Giving Forms, I'm back out here to the Online Giving Forms kind of main menu here. And if I click this drop-down arrow, I've got different options here. I can click Edit, which is the same thing as clicking on it here, clicking on the title. I can click Copy. Copy is a really good one if you're going to create multiple forms that are very similar, but you just want to change a little bit between them, it's a nice way to just kind of churn out a bunch of different forms really fast. You can click the preview and publish button here that takes you straight to the last page of the form settings and lets you just publish it. You can deactivate it from here if you're done with the form and no longer need to use it. But the main thing I'm pointing out here is that there's this view hosted form button. And so what this is a link to the Bloomerang hosted version of the form. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and that's going to open a new window for us here. And this should look somewhat familiar. It's the same form that's on my demo website. It's just one that is hosted with Bloomerang. You get this no matter what after you click publish. It already has a Captcha on it. It's got all the different features that you saw on my website. It's just available here, and you can use this web address to link to this. So at the very least, if you don't have a website, you at least still have a form. So this is something that you can share on social media. You can email it. It's another option that you have at the very least. You've got a way to accept online donations. So that takes care of, we've discussed adding a giving form on your website, and I've shown you the Bloomerang hosted form. So these are two options that you have. These are two forms that you can use to get into your constituents' hands so that they can start donating. Next, I'm going to show you how to add one of these forms in an email. This is something that would be very useful right now to get out to people and show them that you've got this form available online. So really quick, I'm going to head to our email section. Well, first I'm going to copy the form on my website's URL. So this is the web address of this form here that I want to get into my constituents' hands via an email. So in the database, again, if I click the email icon, I can next click email templates. And that'll take us to our main email templates section. I've got a number of demo versions here of different ones I've created in the past. But a new feature that we just released yesterday, we just got up. If you click new in the upper right-hand corner here, we've got starter templates, but we also have some special COVID-19 templates that are available for you to use right now. And it's just something that we put together to try to help you keep up with the current situation that we're living through. And there's just some good starter versions of email for different types of scenarios that you might use for communicating with your donors. So I'm going to go ahead and click COVID-19 templates. And again, this is just a special section with some starter copy for COVID-19 emails that you can use. I am going to go ahead and use closing office and other ways to help. I'll go ahead and click that. That will start up this template. And I'll let it load here. And it's got basically some starter text that you can change to fit your own. It's got an image that you can change. It's basically a means to get going on a new email that you can send out to communicate people to your constituents during this time. The main thing I'm just going to showcase real quick is I'm not going to change any of this copy or anything. I'm just going to show you how to put a button onto the email. If I go over here to the content section, I can click and hold button, and I can drag it and I can drop it right there, and it puts a button right here at the bottom of the email. I'm going to go ahead and change it to say donate, like this. And I'm going to bump that up a little bit so everyone can see. Okay, so we got a donate button here. And when you're working with it, it automatically loads this properties section over here that you're able to modify. So the part where I copied the web address from my form on the website, I can go ahead and add that right in here and just paste that. So that will be where this donate button takes you when you use this email. You have more options here. You can change the color. Maybe you've got some specific brand colors. So if you have like a hex, these are called hex code color for the colors. Maybe you've got a specific one of those that you're trying to use. I'm just picking some some random ones here, something that might kind of show up a little bit for people, nice and green. And let's go ahead and close out of that. And yeah, I can't go into everything that you can do with the button, but you can definitely change it around quite a bit. You can change the text color, you can change the text alignment, all kinds of different things. But basically, it was pretty simple. I just took the form that I had on my website, I copied the web address, I fired up a template email, and I dropped a donate button right here into the email. And from there, I would have, if I was putting this together, I would just go ahead and edit this copy and make it my own. And then I've got a fresh email with a fresh form that I can send out for people to start to become aware of the form and start donating with the form. So that takes care of my first couple of sections. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about keeping track and following up. So at this point, you have set up your form, you've gotten your form out to people, and donations are starting to come in. And so this is a good time to keep track and maybe try to follow up with people and cultivate that relationship with them. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is within my database, I'm going to click the home icon here to head to the dashboard. And we saw this before, but you'll see that there is a campaign progress section right down here, and I have it set to show the COVID-19 campaign. If I click this refresh button, that will refresh the data that is showing on the dashboard. You see that number clicked up. The data on your dashboard does not constantly or automatically update. It does once a day at the very least, but if you're keeping an eye on your campaign here throughout the day, it's a good idea to just go ahead and click that refresh button from time to time. This refresh button is different from the refresh button that is in your browser. It makes a specific call to our servers to let the servers know, hey, I want to see the latest information out here. So it's a good way to keep track of your campaign progress right up front. Next, I'm going to talk about reporting on this form or reporting on the campaign. So if I go to the reporting icon right here and click go to the reports list, I can click new, and then I'm going to click build a report from scratch, and then finally transactions. And that's going to fire up a new transaction report for me. And the first filter I'm going to add when I click the green add filter button is I'm going to search for online form right here. And then I'm going to select my form, which was COVID-19 online donations. I can click out of that box, click OK. And now my transaction form or report is going to show transactions that have come in specifically through that form. Now we associated this form with a campaign. So let's go ahead and do one other thing. I'm going to click the green or button and I'm going to search for campaign. And then I'm going to select COVID-19. It's right here at the top, and I'm going to click OK. And you see that this transactions clicked up a couple. And basically what I'm doing here is I am accounting for other donations that maybe came in towards this campaign that did not come through that form. So I made a couple of donations in my database the other day where they had maybe given me cash or they wrote a check. And so basically I'm accounting for if the donations came in through that form or were applied to that campaign by doing this. But the or join right there is inclusive of both of those. It's taking care of both of those. And it's basically just helping me keep track of everything that's coming in via this COVID-19 effort that I'm doing right now. Finally, I'm going to talk about first-time donor calls. So I'm going to go ahead and leave and head to the dashboard again. So at this point, we've got a way to track the campaign on our dashboard. We've got a report that we put together that we can use to track donations that are coming in through that form. And then finally, out here, we have the first-time donor calls section. This is a newer feature in our database, and basically what it is there's an algorithm running in the background that pulls in constituents when they are donating for the very first time, and displays them up here front and center for you so that you can get in touch with them and start building a relationship with them. If you click the name right here, it gives you some more details about what this first time donation was. It's got the amount, type, date, all this different information here real quick at a glance. You can assign as a task to have someone call this constituent. So maybe you're delegating this as tasks to other people in your database or other members of your team or in your organization. You can assign a task, or you can click enter a call in order to add an interaction. So if I click that really fast, it fires up an interaction. And basically what would have happened is I made that call, and now I'm entering an interaction into the database saying that that call was made. So there's a record now that we saw the first time donation come in, and we made some contact with them to cultivate this relationship. And if I head back really quick, you can also see from this section, you can click see full report, and it will pull up a special report that is pre-built in the database that just shows you everybody that is considered a first-time donor. So I've got a lot of test data in here. You would be seeing, obviously, real constituents. And basically, that's it. And it looks like most of our questions have been answered. So if anyone has any more, we've got a few more minutes. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up here shortly. Okay, we've got a question here for if we have already created an online giving form for donations, how do I integrate Captcha into an existing form? If your form is a standard Bloomerang form like I had on my website, all you would have to do is go to form settings. So you go to settings, website integration, form settings, and you would need to add Captcha here, and then that would automatically show up on your form. If you have a self-hosted form, which was, we didn't really discuss self-hosted forms today because they're a little bit more of a customization, and our focus was kind of more on what can you do to get up and running. You do need to make some changes on your website to the self-hosted forms code specifically, and we do have a help document that helps you work through that. And if you had a web developer possibly work with you previously, it might be a good idea to talk with them as well. But it's basically you'll have to change some of the code in the self-hosted forms code in order to display that Captcha box. So it's a little bit tricky to get into fully over our class here, but it is possible to add that to the form after the fact. If you head to form settings right here, there is some information. If you've got self-hosted forms, it's got documentation on how to update those. And it looks like we've got a few other questions here. It says, can you direct to the Bloomerang form from one website and then use the self-hosted form from yours? We have a parent company that has a website and ours is different. Would rather have them go directly to give versus an extra click to ours. I don't know if I fully understand the question, Lisa. If you want to reach out to our support team with that after this, they might be able to help you out. But I'm not quite sure exactly what we would want to do there. I think I reread it. I think what you're trying to say is like if you had, you can on your website have a donate button that goes to the hosted version of the Bloomerang form. So it would be kind of similar to how I set up that button in the email. You would copy the URL from the Bloomerang hosted form, and then you would use that for the link. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure if I fully understood it, but if you do have more questions, okay, great. Yeah, I'm glad that helped. Yeah, so you definitely have you can definitely talk to support more if you find that you need a little more help getting that set up. But I'm glad that helped clarify. One more question. If you have ongoing year-over-year campaigns but want to see them on the dashboard, how do we set up a start and end date? You would have to basically update those forms, and when the new campaign rolls over in the next year, you would have to start adding, have to apply those new transactions to your new campaign in order to see them applied to those new campaigns. You basically just need a start date, an end date, and a goal amount, and then they will show up on the dashboard. But it's a little bit manual. You basically, when it's time for the new campaign, you just need to apply your new transactions to that specific campaign. So that might involve going to your form and changing which campaign the transactions in that form are being applied to. But then going forward, those transactions to that form will be applied to your new campaign. And it looks like we are out of time. It's a little bit over 12 now. I appreciate everyone showing up today, and I hope this was informative. If you have more questions, I do encourage you to check out our support team and start a live chat with them. They can help you with some more specifics if you have some specific things that you need worked out that I wasn't able to fully cover here. But I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.